If you've got a mug, cup, or chalice, let's raise it for a simultaneous sip. 3, 2, 1. Cheers. Oh, maybe we should have more of like a 3, 2, 1 cadence, kind of like how like in music, when we did the Pledge of Allegiance each morning in school, which I was passionate about saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I even said God, even though I'm not a member of any religion, but part of it is like I am, let's say, religiously committed to my students and our county regulations as a professional employee. But also, I ever since COVID, I've talked about on this live stream how I miss some traditions as well, something that kind of everyone can get behind, and even like school spirit, holidays. I've enjoyed kind of understanding what some of the value is, even just logistically. I've even chatted about how I appreciate things like fire drills, where it's something that we all practice together and there's a reason behind it, even though it seems like, wait a second, there hasn't been like a school fire since like 1911 or 1917 or something like that, that actually was super significant. And I want to be a little bit careful with that because I need to actually go back and fact check that. But I've heard things like that where it's like there's more, obviously more school shootings than there are like big fires in schools, which part is a testament to how far we've come in terms of like safety and those things with the fire side. Um, but yeah, so I have thought about like, do we need a mascot? Should we have some sort of like jingle or a saying? Sume and Isla did do Taekwondo, and they have all these quotes and little inspirational, motivational phrases all around the dojo that they go to, and they even have a saying, or I don't know if it's called a chant. That kind of sounds weird, but like they have something that they all say that's kind of like, who are we? We believe in discipline, loyalty, being kind. I don't remember what it was, but it's really moving, and the kids really get into it. So what are some of your thoughts about like building our brand and identity and kind of what we stand for and how we might communicate that with the world?
What do you mean? Like, I know universities sometimes have like a mantra, like a
A
motto,
mantra. There we
or a
go.
motto, or something like that. So I think something like just kind of like a quick summary, like even if you haven't quite ran through the entire Weekable page and found like the whole care philosophy, or just a summary of it in terms of like, oh, if you know the motto, you get the gist a little. I think that'd help kind of like be kind of a, what do you call, a pillar we can all kind of work around. Because I think, like you said about tradition and stuff, I'm starting to see the appeal, the pros of it as well, where it's like you can avoid it and everyone's kind of doing their own thing, but then it's kind of hard to not like disconnect from each other quite a lot when they're all just wandering in our own directions completely. It feels like there should be something in the center, like a foundation that we're all working around, and we can do our own thing around that, but it kind of keeps us building around the same area, so we're actually building something together. I think would be quite
Yeah.
helpful. So I think that's that kind of motto, mantra, whatever you want to call it, something to kind of solidify the community feel of it all, I think would be quite useful. I don't
So,
know if
and
the mascot type thing, would you blend it into the AI at all that I know Joe's working on, where it like, as if
We
that's
could do it kind of like maybe the one the Catholics have going at the minute.
what, the little anime thing?
Yeah, little thing, but
okay,
it could
let's
be
definitely.
like teacher with wings.
Well, yeah, so definitely, so one thing I want to chat about today is some things like mottos or mantras, but potentially a mascot. I'm kind of thinking like angels, care angels, something like that. I want to hear first about your two experience with, do you in school or in a place of work or something, have they ever practiced everyone remembering what the vision and mission statement is? Like, for example, when I was in Peru, it was a big deal for people to be able to remember what our mission is for our school. And so we kind of had it up everywhere. The kids sort of memorized it. The faculty kind of quizzed each other. It was fun. It was like, who are we? And then the superintendent, his name was Kerry Jacobson, and a wonderful, wonderful man. He just retired. And he would do this thing with the whole entire school campus where he would have everyone together for our assembly, and he would go, "We," and everyone would chant, we are, we are. And then we were Kalahio Roosevelt, right? So we would be, we are Clay Roosevelt or FDR. And it was like once a condor, always a condor, because we were the condors, and we all felt that, and schools kind of all do that, but like it kind of hit different at this school because people really loved being at school. People loved the community, the parents. There was a legacy component of it, so that the school had existed for several decades at that point. So there were folks who on staff who were students, parents whose children now go to the school, etc. And even in my own alma mater, Manassas Park City Schools, which is a small public school district in Manassas, Park, Virginia, where I grew up. It's getting a similar culture now, where it's been around for a few decades, and folks are proud and have seen the growth, and it's a cool community that has been very organic and authentic, and true to itself. And I think that when we design schools, we want to, just like in We Equal App, how We Equal App has done a really good job of trying to take the best features that are possible out there and putting our own spin on it, or the team's own spin. And it's so like real and magical to be a part of. And so how do we do that intentionally with the messaging and even things that aren't just a motto, but with what we look like, what we wear? What will we have a song? Will we have like a school theme song or something? I don't know. So have you had, even in your own school experience, anything like a motto where you said, or a mission statement, or even like the Pledge of Allegiance that is recited by county regulation in public schools each morning in U.S. schools?
Sorry, just got a phone call.
It's okay.
We had nothing really that like that. Yeah, I remember in primary school we had to like remember our prayers because I went to a Church of England school and that. But other than that, not really. Like even I know universities have mottos and that. Couldn't tell you what mine was. Do you know? No, it's just not really. It feels like antiquated. Like you'd have to check Wikipedia to figure it out because it doesn't get mentioned at all. So it feels that sense of like maybe it's a little worse here in the UK than yours, but it feels like that sense of community has definitely just been left behind a bit. And now there's not really anything binding aside from like what you yourself kind of force into it, whether that's like you're going to clubs or trying to be more outgoing in events and stuff like that. It doesn't really feel like there's any binding agent between students, at least in my experience.
The only thing we really recognize is like the school logo, but because in Liverpool we have what's called the liver bird, and it's I actually don't know what the heck it is, but it's like a really big bird figure, and it's on a lot of the Liverpool buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a classic piece of architecture. So the university also adopted it into their logo. So we kind of all unify around that, I guess. But
is it a logo that people really rally behind and are proud to kind of wear all over themselves?
You made me think it's more of a football thing because it's the Liverpool symbol for football club. The liver bird's the symbol for the football club.
Well, it's from the buildings in the city.
It is, but the reason people are wearing it and like rallying behind it is football. So it's mainly, so there's some of that where they have their own songs and mottos and stuff like "You'll Never Walk Alone" is Liverpool's. So there is in the football dimension of it.
See, that to me sounds like Carousel from Rodgers and Hammerstein. It's a famous musical. You'll never walk alone.
But that's how big the community on that one is, at least, because I'm not even into football, but I know that one. I don't know my own university's motto, but I know that one.
Oh, you do? Okay. Do you know a lot of musical theater, Jedd?
Oh, no, I meant the motto for Liverpool club.
Oh, okay, so not Rodgers and Hammerstein. Well, it's a beautiful song, although it's sung after Billy Bigelow dies. So it's Nettie Fowler is comforting someone who's struggling with that, and so okay, so that's interesting. So the spirit kind of didn't really come around the identity of necessarily the message or the motto itself, but just around the fun or the love of football. Is that right?
Yeah, and more like kind of the sense of communal settings because you're rooting for your team now. So I think the goal is defined. Your team has to win. It's not like, oh, you all happen to be in this university and you're all doing your own separate degrees and maybe you see each other, maybe you don't. You're only there for you, really. Whereas the team dynamic, I think you have a shared goal and it's a very clearly defined one, which is just win, support the team, etc. So I think, and the fact that it's got a logo and you can identify the other teams as well, it's a little easier to imprint on, I guess. I think you can see that a lot in general because I think if you just look at how often we hear the word community or even fandom or anything, people are like generally desperate for that sense of kind of like this is us type thing. I just don't think it's being fulfilled in education much at all. Like we'd have like some sort of things, like I know even if you think about Harry Potter getting big, where they have all those group houses and stuff, and people are obsessed with doing those quizzes to find out which one they're in. And I think schools tried to implement something like that when I was little, where they'd like have like Ruby House and Sapphire House in my primary school and stuff like that, but they never did anything with it. So it just faded out. So I think there is a need there for it, and yeah, I think it's just about how you implement it and make it a bit more solid than just like kind of a passing kind of label that you throw out once and then fades out.
Yeah, and I find too that it has to be something that it's not just the students, like the faculty, the families, the administration. Like people need to kind of all be in on it, and it's got to be genuine too. It's not something where it's like, oh well, someone forced this logo onto us, or it's like, oh, we're adopting something. But it's that collective ownership that I've talked about a lot, where it is meaningful and everyone can kind of like see what that means in the community. Like for example, we Equal Out families here, and hey y'all, how you doing? And they're putting a comment about when the next Equal Academy public event is, and I think even what we engage in with our events should be very much in line with who we are and what our brand stands for. So, and to answer your question, we Equal Out family, I believe it was Friday in about 2 weeks here. What was it? Friday the 29th? Here, I have to pull up a calendar here. Looking up my Google Calendar. Yeah, so Friday, I think it's the 30th. Wasn't that when we were sharing in the team room, Joe? And Rebecca was supposed to be on today to chat more about it. But I believe we had said that day worked really well for us to do some kind of event, which I think we should still chat about what we want to take on. So something like an open mic night, dance party, some sort of arts, and we have lots of arts and crafts stuff to do, like painting, for the fun for the kids to do. We've obviously got the Empower Kids side where we can do an open gym situation. But that is the date when Rebecca and I and y'all seem available, and I want to be moving forward with that. Does that sound like a plan? And we'll let you chime in on that. And yeah, so yeah, definitely, I agree with what you're saying, Jedd and Tara. Well, and actually, maybe Tara, you can chime in a little bit more about that. Jedd was basically describing how like there's not necessarily in education this sort of spirit that's sort of directed at what the ethos of the organization of an institution is all about. Do you have any more thoughts about that, of how we might do that, or some of your own experiences of ways that you have felt spirited or you felt connected to an organization, whether it's business, school, anything like that?
Well, in the terms of British education, no. We're really falling behind on that one.
What has been the impact of that? Because it sounds like even in your hometown or wherever you're living right now, you can almost feel the effects of not having like a grounding in where you come from or how you grew up. Because from what I understand, like people don't really know each other or connect with each other, or there isn't necessarily that social cohesion or trust or community feel vibe across where you live. Is that kind of how you've described it?
I'd say it's generational. So where I live, I don't think anyone my age has, but the old generation do. Like, everyone seems to know each other. But it does feel like where I live is like 2 generations behind, where like it's still largely cash based and basically no one knows how to use the internet properly. So the old generation do seem to have that more communal thing, whether it's just a remnant of their era. but newer gens, no. It feels like everyone's, because it's so a bit rougher as well, everyone ventures online and stays there. But then online, when there's not really, your options are Facebook and Twitter, essentially, in terms of social media, I guess. Instagram, where it's all, here's a picture, here's a comment, here's a like. It's not exactly you're like building a proper relationship unless you're really the outgoing type who can take a risk and kind of like, you know, want to maybe have video calls and like build those relations online somehow. So I think most people are training their social skills on this kind of loose social media way, and it doesn't translate to the real world at all, where you're having a little more in person. There's loads more cues that maybe you've just not honed properly because you've trained it on social media's very lax approach to socializing. So I think it's kind of a snowball effect where the better you get at maybe social media, the worse you get in real life. And as everyone does that, we're all drifting apart. And when there's no cohesion, whether it's like a goal or team spirit or vibe or mantra, whatever you want to call it, as I said, there's no pillar in the middle. So everyone's wandering their own way and just getting further and further from each other to the point where like it's can't even see each other.
And also to piggyback off what you said, because that's I love what you're saying. It's also that I don't think that we can have a bunch of spirit around a fixed, like a static identity that doesn't grow with the world and other people as we as a society and culture evolve. So for example, if someone is like stuck in their ways of something that made sense 50 or 200 years ago, now there is absolutely value in tradition of where people come from, all of that. But for example, if you have folks in your community who are being impacted even economically because we're not up to date with what is really going on in the world, with our technology, with how business is done, with even understanding the political landscape, and we're sort of let's say frozen in time. I think a big part of synergy is growing together. So when we talk about living and learning better together, it's something where, if you look throughout history, even the Protestant Reformation, there was a huge shift in people's religious practices. Even, I attend several religious institutions myself, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is kind of founded on this growing doctrine where, every 6 months there's this general conference and there's additional, let's say, word of God. And I put that in air quotes because each religion has their own, what they have. But it's added on and potentially modified, which is kind of a neat idea that even with companies that go through a rebrand, you have a logo redesign. OpenAI very controversially has kind of revised their mission and vision, and so I think it's cool to think about how we can have a foundation of who we are that's going to be constant and that through line, but that it's always something that we can revisit as a community as some new need or a new event, some big shift comes up, like COVID, for example. It totally rocked the world. And so I want to get into a little bit about who we are, especially from your perspective, because I want to hear some of your beliefs from the past year of being in Weequal about who you believe we are and who you are and what you contribute. And moving towards something like, I do want to talk specifically about like a mascot or a motto, branding, logo. We have the neural net. We have the care, infinity, and heart with the colors. So I'm kind of thinking about all of those things. So how would you describe who we are as Weequal and what you bring to the table in terms of our shared, but also your individual identities?
I'd say Weequal's mainly built around, as you said, the care community type spirit, where we're all helping each other grow. And I don't know, obviously we've all got our own measurements of how we want to grow. Like we've got obviously different sections in Weequal, whether it's for music or traditional education or maybe a fitness section or anything. I think there's even a cooking one, so it's all just about growth in general. So I would say fostering an environment where growth is encouraged and desired, I guess, because obviously a person could just go self-improve in their normal life without any help. They won't, typically. So it's like just providing the environment where they're encouraged to make those little nudges, or even like a big nudge if it's needed. But I think, what would you call it? Almost like there's a flow to it where, as opposed to like, oh, if I'm not constantly moving, I'm stagnant. It's like, oh, if you're struggling, Wequal as a whole, as a community, is still flowing in the right direction. So you don't always have to be constantly fighting against stream to get anywhere. You will be pulling you along for the ride as well as you can grow yourself, just because the environment you're in is one that's geared forward. So I think something like that, in terms of a motto, I think, well, mottos have to be like simple and easily applicable. So I do think there should be like some traditional element where it is a constant, even if you can apply it to different situations. But I also think one of the most important things is that it's directive. So I think you could have one that's like, love is good or something like that. But I don't think that's like,
That's very
do you know what
generic.
I mean? It's generic, but it's also non-directive. It's like,
Yeah.
everyone's going to go, yes, it is. But I don't know if there's that pushed, okay, but how are you going to implement this in your day-to-day within Wequal? So I think it should be something that you can see
I
in a
guess
non-abstract
maybe
way.
like something like where everyone learns together, or we all teach each other, or something along those lines.
Yeah, something like where you can
Because
see
the
what you can do
difference
about it.
with Wequal from other such institutions is the fact that well, all of us, like including the faculty and teachers, we are all learning from each other. Like we follow the same weekly process that the students are encouraged to. So I'd say that's one big factor that should be played around with.
I'd say the
Yeah.
learn by doing one is a good one as well. So rather than like
Yeah.
feeling the need to just talk about your plans or having these abstract motions in your head, okay, but it doesn't matter if you're not great at it right now. Put it into practice. That's your first step. So I think something that like pushes people to make that first jump, where maybe you don't nail it first try, maybe it's not the best output you've made, but at least you've actually started, and we'll all applaud you for that and help you get further. But so I think it's welcoming that initiative, something directive that makes that first push would be a good one, I think. So that, oh, I'm struggling to get my project out, or oh, maybe it's not good enough to publish. Then you can just think of the motto and go, no, I should still. Do you know what I mean? Something like that you can like refer back to in your moments of doubt or wondering what you should do next, that you've got a motto that's like not so abstract and generic that it's useless, and it's like, yeah, okay, love good, but also it's got that directive push to it where you're like, no, yes, you do.
Yeah, that's so beautiful because I do think there is a flow, there is a direction of where in mental models, some call the difference between like a rut and a river mental model. All mental models are technically imperfect, right? But I do think that in the ideal, we should be imagining a vision that we all want to go towards, and that it's at least in theory something like a river, that we all flow together. And even, you're right, if someone is struggling, or they don't feel that they're quite in the right direction, but that we as a community will surround them with so much love and joy of learning, and also that direct support as well, that's very tangible, so that we can help kind of nudge and encourage people in the direction of something that's good for everyone. So that we don't have folks who feel isolated and are on an island and aren't growing themselves. People can totally feel when they're in a place of trust, where they trust each other. It's reciprocal. It's not something where people are just putting on a smile. My feces o-meter, let's say, is quite strong for things like if something's AI generated, or if someone's kind of putting on an act or a show, because we see so much content that's like that now online, where I also think that other folks, even we were at the academy yesterday, there's a lot of nervousness and anxiety around using technology, and the degree to which we have like a facade as people, and even with our own learning. Because there are some projects that we read, it's like, I mean, yes, we want to use technology as a tool to demonstrate our knowledge, but there was this a report I was reading yesterday, like over 90% of 1,000 college students that were interviewed are using artificial intelligence models to basically help them complete assignments, and I have nothing wrong with that. Now, in what way is it being used to actually demonstrate their learning? I think that's worth investigating. I don't think it's bad at all that folks are utilizing, especially if it's a free tool or a paid service. And Tara, you yourself are using AI-powered services to help you reach your creative potential. And so I also don't want there to be some kind of like doom and gloom over like, oh, it's going to be so difficult to have some kind of river. But at the same time, it's like, is there anything that folks can get behind, which, kind of to your point, Jedd, I think something like care, curiosity, and compassion, I think can be those anchors potentially for us to look back on. Like if we are nervous about our own work, we don't want to put it out there. It's like, okay, well, what can we go back to with our motto or our core values that's going to kind of help us in education, we might call it that zone of proximal development, where it's like you've got that point of where you can achieve something by yourself or what you feel, but then there's something just above that. And maybe if you've got a work that you want to put out there, you don't know if it's something that you want to put out to the public, but if you're in a community of care and trust, it's almost like that gets you past like what you currently feel right now, but you're surrounded by this love that almost acts in like a faith or a trust buffer that gets you over that hump. And then you put yourself out there, and then folks show through their compassion that yes, we actually mean what we say in our mottos and our mantras and our songs. So we're going to show you that support to lift you up and empower you and not, break you down. We're not going to, Sume and Isla have the song "Don't Kill the Baby," right? So we don't want to take baby inspirations and totally squash them, because people feel that as well. And trust is a very delicate feeling. It's a feeling of confidence in part. And so if folks have their confidence shattered, it takes a while to repair. And so we want to have a community that all is on board with being very supported and supportive and encouraging. So what do you think about like those pillars, curiosity and compassion, like kind of directly being part of something like a motto or a mantra?
I really like curiosity and compassion in terms of just like the openness of it, because I think that was one thing. Like when you mentioned, the almost fake conversations people have and like putting on airs, and I don't think it's hard to tell, but it is like it's how we've trained ourselves to socialize at this point. So it's almost like everyone is so used to putting the mask up and like these are what you say, this is how you say it. Don't go too weird. Don't like show your real like interests in case what if they don't like them? I'm scared like they'll reject or something like that. So I think having that level of authenticity and curiosity does open it up, because I think once you've put something out there that you yourself made and were interested in, and it's not like, as you said, the baby's not killed, it's not squashed into the dirt because, oh, what if everyone hates it? I think you do get that sense of immediate kind of, oh, amazing. Like you'll want to do it again because it's this new and it's authentic. So it compares very well to this kind of like very thin, shallow conversations or fake personalities we put on people normally. So I think that once someone's used to it and they've got that first step in, I think the growth from there is actually pretty straightforward. It's just the onboarding of like, it is new. So especially if we're not used to being more authentic and putting our interests and projects and stuff out there, that first 0 to 1 step is terrifying because there's no experience. We don't know how it's going to land. But then 1 to say 100, you've got something, you're already in. You know what each next step is a little bit, even if it's just one at a time. So it's not quite as scary and it gets that exponential growth we're after. I think it's just the focus on getting people from the 0 to 1, like that, making that first step. And then once they're in, great. But so I think compassion and curiosity are good for that. I do think there's one thing missing, which is that like self-directive push. Like in terms of, I can see people being curious for others' projects and people for caring about other people to encourage them. It's how a person can encourage themselves a little bit as well, I think is the only part that's missing from that.
Well, I think Sume and Isla, when they initially launched Week Will School makeshift homeschool, I think did a fantastic job with this, because I mean there's several things that they did just swimmingly well that are just miles above even what we would consider professional educators. I mean, one is like from what I saw in their videos and from all the stories and even what they were modeling when I met them at the beginning of last year, like the level of care and commitment to each person and meeting each person's individual needs, and also being like not coming from necessarily a place of like authority where they're judging people, but that I think that peer relationship probably put a lot of students, their peers at ease, so that it wasn't like, oh, we're getting a grade, because there weren't any grades, and there aren't any grades, any traditional like letter grades, in week school at all. Um, but they basically kind of had a safe place for people to show their real ideas, and they were giving coaching in addition to the families were heavily involved as well, of giving coaching, of bouncing ideas off of each other, so that if someone had was just wrestling with an initial concept of something, that could just always be developed, so that like what's coming to mind is almost like that there wasn't as much opportunity even for writer's block, and for all these blocks to kind of like build up, so that now you've got this overwhelming sense of, oh, well, now I don't even know where to go at all.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things that I think the home screen does very well. Although like it's not always a technical solution of like, okay, well, how do we put a little baby inspiration out there? But it was that social experience of like coming on Zoom just like this, versus like in my doctorate program, where it was fully asynchronous, and we didn't have all of these hangouts and meetups or pods or weekly processes where there was that consistent kind of person to person workshopping and playing with ideas. I think that ability to play is really important, and the extent to which we can facilitate that consistently is something that I don't think any school has done very well, because it's traditionally like you've got assignments that you do, and there's like a due date, and there's this build up towards that, and hopefully you get it done by the deadline. But where's kind of the togetherness? Like I don't physically see that flow and everyone flowing together each step of the way in a continuous, in calculus, I call it a differentiable manner. But like if you go from point A to like Z, and you've got the deadline, it's like, well, where is the flow in between there? And can you see the B? Can you see the C? Can you see the D with all of those ladder rungs? And I think having some of these signals with the branding, but also each step of the process also is in alignment with that, is an important thing. And so with that, like I want to really try to like hone in on, is something like an orientation with a brand of something that people can get spirited about, like do we think it's worth our time to be really exploring that as we look into like launching our full program? And do we want to like invest as a faculty of like building this community identity alongside with the more technical parts of our curriculum and our graduation requirements and what exact courses we're offering? Like do you think this is like a valuable thing for us to even be working through at this stage?
I think the community thing, like the motto and stuff, to build that kind of, oh, I'm in this community now. I want this community to succeed, and it wants me to succeed, so we'll grow together. I think fostering that in some way is definitely going to be a helpful thing. And I liked what you pointed out about Sume, where she's more of a peer. So it's less of an authority giving you grades, where there's these people you can see acting as templates. They're doing the same thing that we're asking you to do. So whether Sume's putting out projects or like being engaged in the chat and making her own rooms and stuff, it's not like a teacher where you don't actually emulate the teacher in school. You're just trying to be the best student, but there's no model for you really in that classroom.
Yeah.
Aside from like the best other student who's in the same place you are, they're just as new. Whereas here, if you've got the students like Sume and stuff operating, and they're running the rooms and they're doing exactly what we're asking the students to do, the model that you can kind of like, oh, that's what I should be doing and learning and comparing to. And there's this structure there that I can imitate until I've integrated it properly. And now I know how to do it myself. Mm-hmm. I think that's a very helpful thing. So I think we should lean into that part of things, like building that template and structure, the foundation bit, where imagine a new person comes in and they can clearly see what they should be doing each week, how they should be operating within the groups and stuff. And then after like 2 weeks of that, I think because it's so authentic and enjoyable to like actually put yourself out there and get that positive compassion and feedback back, I think once they're in. It's just having that, I think solidifying that foundational structure a person is immediately exposed to when they come in, so they can see and operate properly, and then integrate it into themselves to the point where now they themselves can act as a model for someone else who's new. And it's kind of this cyclical loop that way.
Yeah.
I think that should be the main focus of Weekly as a whole right now, because I think that's if you can nail that, everything else can kind of be built on top of it because it's a stable ground now. It's just getting that part nailed down first, I think. And the motto can be a part of that, where you're building that structure and culture. Like, oh, what should I do? Oh, refer back to the motto. Are you meeting these care, curiosity, or whatever we decide to put into it? Are you meeting these things? Yes. Okay, well, you're on the right track. Then keep pushing that way.
So it sounds like we kind of need, because I'm very much about like the inductive approach to learning, where you see the examples and then you kind of put together like a generalization. But it's almost like we kind of need both. We need the deductive as well, where we have like a statement, very clear, but simple and flexible ideas that are that concrete foundation of who we are, that folks can actually read and absorb. But then they need to actually see the exemplars of that, so that we can kind of have both directions. Do you agree with that?
Like you lost at sea. It's like you can give them the environment for it, where, oh, here's your raft, here's your life jackets. Now you're not going to drown. You can float around and do your own thing, but you also do need a compass to get home or find where you're going. So I think you need the environment, but you also need the direction. And I think both of them are in tandem, very important for building that solid foundation. After you've got that, you can freewheel as much as you want. Maybe you want to do a different type of project, reinvent the wheel a little bit. But as long as you've got this foundation, so even if that doesn't work out, you're not going to fall further than the Weequal community is going to let you. So you've always got that net there that's like safe, in terms of like you're building around something as opposed to just being adrift and drowning at sea.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's important for folks to know, like, well, on this live stream, I've reflected a little bit about what has the culture or the vibe or the feel of, even just in the last month or two, of what this live stream has been. And it's gone, I don't know if professional or even sterile is the right word, but it's been a little bit more like intellectual. And we're trying to really hammer out some things. Whereas I know like Joe Sumi and Isla, historically on this live stream, it's been much more creative and much more fun, and have like they bring the boom so well. And when I'm with them, like I almost feel like my personality, it kind of like flips a switch into more of like my Hufflepuff like theater mode sometimes.
Well, that's what I mean. So in terms of like building that foundation, we're all still fairly new. So we could be, we're having to be a little more professional, building this sturdy foundation. Sume and Joe and that have been doing this for years. They're firmly building up from the foundation already, so they can freewheel and do what they like and be as creative as they like, because they're built already on an established foundation. So I think we're going to get there too, I'm sure. It's just that we're having to operate a little lower to this stable ground and make sure that it's all steady before we start building up into creativity.
Well, I want to be a little bit vulnerable and share a little bit about some of my intellectual, but also personality side. There was this article that Dr. Lee Hong shared with me yesterday about Virginia public schools are making a modification to some of our standardized testing. They're pushing the testing window towards a little later in the school year, which is, I think teachers are going to celebrate that. But I think I did something a little unprofessional. I thought feces, and I mentioned that word today, I described as what they're doing. I likened it to like dumping feces on our dinner plates and just pushing it around so that it looks a little bit better, but it clearly still smells and looks like feces. And so I want to show you that post, but I just feel really badly because it got like asterisked. And I'm like, oh no, like I think I might have done something unprofessional, even though I didn't say, a bad word. I don't think. I think feces is okay. But I do want to apologize for my wild unprofessionalism. There was this article. It just came out on May 12th. Virginia overhauls SOL testing to boost student achievement. This new law will tie test scores to final grades, which is wow. Shift test timing and give parents clearer results. Oh boy. So this was apparently a bipartisan agreement. And one of the ways this legislation aims to improve outcomes is by making the Virginia Standards of Learning assessments count as 10% of the student's final grade, a shift from current policy. And the legislation will also require the release of more past exams to improve preparation. That I actually really agree with. I've ranted about this many, many times. I even have projects about this where still in the past 25 years, there is still only one practice test per 7-year curriculum cycle for these SOL tests. And at this point, we just had a new curriculum cycle start this past year. It's basically still the same practice test. It is horrific. But it is a
every year. Like whatever it was last year, we can just access that whenever and just use that one.
Oh boy, it boils my blood. This is apparently a gigantic step forward for Virginia students. Step forward. We are all in on Virginia, spending $400 million on high dosage tutoring so that we can fill out standardized tests. And it's a kind of a win all the way around. And then here's one quote that I really like. I don't know who this is, and I don't want to get in trouble for this. Remember, I'm being very vulnerable on the live stream. Quote, I think this makes Virginia a leader in delivering a world-class education for families across the Commonwealth. I don't know, but I think so, maybe. And so this apparently will improve the quality of the tests and make them more transparent, which that's actually a good thing. That's one thing I've been advocating for. But basically, you can see that the exams themselves are not fundamentally really changing very much. It's still a multi-billion-dollar for-profit company is creating these tests that I don't know anyone who has contributed to the assessments themselves or even to the curriculum. Apparently, there are some fancy people who are coming up with all this stuff. Not necessarily designing them for the real world. We still are not assessing the Virginia 5 Cs. We have no idea how we're going to do those, but we have dumped. I can actually read you this quote here. This is what I said in response. Thanks for sharing. Many teachers will celebrate the later testing window. However, I'm thinking about how Virginians are being served feces. I am so sorry. It does have 5 asterisks. I didn't think that was going to be commented out on their dinner plates, and politicians are pushing the food around to give the appearance of people enjoying their meals. Meanwhile, it still smells like feces and everyone is starving and increasingly hangry. So that was my little moment of vulnerability, and maybe call it a rant, call it passion. Sometimes I look back because I attend all these places of worship and religion. Jesus turned tables. And we people wore those little bracelets in the 90s. What would Jesus do? I'm like, okay, so if we're gonna model something quite good and our blood is boiling about something, I'm all about the pitchforks. I'm all about the revolution. And so what are some moments where I can let off a little steam? I think trying to drop the word feces is probably one moment where I can show some of my passion. But I don't know. Maybe that's unprofessional. No one knows. Everyone's crazy now. We don't even know what words mean anymore in the United States, at least.
I'm sure there's way harsher comments on the internet, so I don't think you've stacked up too badly. Yeah, I think as long as it's pointing to what we do instead, I think that'd be the focus. So, as you said, it feels like they've Febrezed this plate of crap and then expected the applause, and it's like, okay, but so I think as long as it's always pushing back to, okay, here's a problem that they're doing, we're going to fix that. So, and pointing back to this project-based learning thing, where whether it's just because I thought the old big problem with exams was you'd memorize out of a book. So my way to revise is I'd just copy out the textbook I'd get over and over again as my handwriting deteriorated more and more with each loop. And then by the time I got to the exam, I could muscle memory it because, oh, this question, I remember that. So it's barely any thought is actually going into it's just rehearsal. But that's not a skill because like within 2 weeks, you're on to the next exam or the next project. Already out my mind, couldn't tell you a thing about it, wouldn't pass the test if I did it again. So I think it's not really learning, it's more just demonstrating the level of stress and rehearsal you can operate at is the only thing that it seems to really be testing. So I think that type of skill-based focus and like how quickly you can adapt and learn would be a better thing. So like these project-based skills, whether it's classes, teaching coding, or your music lessons, or something demonstrable. I think that's what projects do, where you're building that digital resume that we're asking students to do with their projects. If you go back to the earliest one, the latest one, it's not like a test. They don't even know where it is or don't even remember. You can compare visually and clearly. Oh, here's my level ups. I can see how I've improved in this area. I've got a skill. Maybe we've been doing the video calls, which I thought were very helpful for pitching projects. I think we should encourage more of that rather than just putting a project out there, which is still good as a first step. I think being able to express your project and run through it with someone and answer their questions, I think that gives you a deeper understanding. It makes it more integrated and learned properly. It's going to stay in you. And it also builds your confidence in expressing your ideas in a more applicable way to the real world. It's not like typing again. You've actually spoke to someone about this, and then you've got that confidence that you can now take into loads of other areas in life. That's what I found, at least, where the more I did those beta class project pitches or whatever you want to call them, it was like noticing, oh, I'm not getting as anxious as I usually do in terms of presenting my ideas or talking to people or even just day-to-day stuff. And I think that, oh, that was cool. That makes you want to do more. So it's almost like the tests that we have, these projects or pitches or anything, it lights a fire that promotes more. I don't think anyone's ever done an exam and thought, oh, sweet, can't wait to do another one, ever. So I think that's another advantage we have, where the more you do, the more you want to do. And I think that's how learning should be, where it's exponential in terms of your desire to learn, as opposed to completely killing any desire and burning you out, which I think school struggles with.
Absolutely. Tara, what do you think is, what's your reaction to someone saying something like, oh, well, we can't change at that scale. There's no way we could start doing project-based learning. It's going to be too difficult for the kids to do. The educators, they're not trained. They're only trained in math. They can't actually help human beings, which I know is not really what folks are saying, right? But that general sentiment that, no, we can't change. It just can't be done, even though we closed schools in March of 2020 and we had a huge, gigantic shift. But we can't do it again because now it's different.
I don't know really, 'cause it's like, well, obviously you can make these huge changes when you're required to, as with COVID. But yeah, everyone seems to be just scared to change like the status quo of what's currently going, and they're like, it's going fine. Children are complaining, maybe, but they're children.
Mhm.
It's fine. And just leave it as it is.
Well, I think it's the same thing I mentioned with that 0 to 1 thing. Whether it's people being scared to put projects out there, like what will they think? What if it's not good enough? I think it's the same on like a macro scale with education as a whole. It's like,
Or a huge scale.
Mega macro. But oh, we can't make that change. What if it doesn't work out? What if we're at fault? What if people blame us? So I think the only way they're going to do it is if small scale type ones, whether it's like online apps or like just homeschool communities, or there's like this little micro level push that then builds from that and go as like a test case. So then once they've seen, oh, it can work. Oh, there is a model we can learn from. So I think it's just demonstrating our own success within this. And then that'll hopefully inspire more change or more funding into these types of educational programs. So it grows from grounds up sort of thing, as opposed to be waiting for this massive government education system to make the shift on its own. I don't think that's ever going to happen.
No.
I think you have to demonstrate through lots of smaller education platforms that are going to like act as the model to test the waters. And then once the giant government education model decides, oh, it's safe, I can dip my toe in, it'll be a very gradual shift from there.
And that was tough for me to learn over the past 2 years or so. I before I came to Weequal, again, I was ready to come with pitchforks, but I also was just really frustrated with the way things were, and knew in theory, the way that things might be. But I think we're actually doing exactly what you said, where we've learned from different pilot, or basically like all of what Weequal's been doing for the past several years, and what we've all experienced in our own journey as learners and through education systems now around the world. And we're doing the model, or at least what we think could be the model. And so I wonder if we could spend the last few minutes here. I do want to chat a little bit about this mascot idea, which haven't really socialized very much. This is kind of the first time that I'm kind of bringing it up. But again, I think when we launch, we should have a clear identity, something that we're all excited about. And we're going to have this tagline, heaven on earth. I just feel like something like angels makes a ton of sense. So I want to look at what if we Google like some other teams or schools that has mascots that are kind of like this to kind of get some inspiration? Do we think that would be a good idea right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, worth a go. I think it would be, because we have a bit of a wide age group from like younger kids to like teens. It's how it would be applicable to all of them as well. Because I worry when we Google mascot angel, we're going to get the most cartoonishly childish depiction ever. So it has to be. There's a cool element I think that'll be needed as well, where it's like kind of.
Yeah. Okay. So, oh boy, this is funny. I don't even want to necessarily share this, but this is the first thing that came up. I just typed in mascot angels. The Los Angeles Angels mascot is not an angel, but the rally monkey. So it's the mascot for the Los Angeles Angels. That is really funny. That is not what I was going for.
Did they even consider an angel? That's a weird tilt on them.
Okay, that is. I don't even know why I'm showing that on the live stream. But we do have a few schools here, or you know what? Maybe we can go to ChatGPT. So I'm gonna go and stop the screen share. See, this is what I get for sharing my screen and just doing a random Google search, because I want to see other schools who have and sports teams who have the motto of angel. So maybe let's actually do that real quick. Do you two know of anyone in the UK schools or sports teams who has something like, I don't know, angels, or even like the devils? Like there's the blue devils. There's things that are kind of biblical in nature, although we're not necessarily going biblical. But I do like the concept of heaven on earth and angels. Do you know any schools or teams that have anything that's a mascot of that nature?
I'll come to think of it, the two Liverpool football teams are blue and red.
Yeah, but one of them isn't even one's just a shield looking thing. I don't know. I'd focus on maybe wings in general then. I don't know if you'll get something easier with that. Like, because angel, you're always going to get a bit more of a, what was it called? Wow, what's that tiny cartoonish Bible show called?
VeggieTales?
Yeah, that. I worry you're going to get like a lot of that if you like angel mascot, just because it'll come across. I can't think of other examples really. It's always going to be tied into that. I wonder if something more sigilly, maybe like it's a motto, and then there's like a university logo type thing that is then like, but it's obviously identifiable. So like for example, Liverpool again, you might get people drawing like different like iterations of the liver bird, which is their logo. So it's like everyone recognizes what it is, but you'll get like fan art and stuff, like kind of like making it their own in different ways. It's almost like the symbol itself is more important than it being the mascot. Like no one thinks the liver bird has like a personality winking at you with its finger guns out. It's more just like a symbol that you recognize. So I wonder if that type of thing might work better than a mascot.
Yeah. And so it doesn't have to be like literally a mascot, but like for example, like the so in the NFL, it's like, this is a really good example, like the New Orleans Saints. So it's not really like their mascot, but it's literally like the name of who they are.
Yeah.
I have a cousin who actually attended the College of the Holy Cross, and they use the Crusaders. That's kind of cool. And it's also interesting because like we're not like a religious organization, but something that is like all inclusive and very powerful and indicative of something moving towards this collective universal heaven on earth concept. I also am really interested in kind of going all in on that concept, because I do think what we should signal should also be quite powerful. And so for us to have something that doesn't really mean much, that's in alignment with our mission, I don't know if that's the direction that we should go in. But let's see, some other ones are, Guardians is an interesting one. That comes from, I guess, this Catholic high school.
As a word, yeah, but you'd have to visually tie it to the motto. So if someone's like, "Oh, the Guardians," I have no idea what the Guardians guy looks like. Whereas if like you say like angel, I know what an angel looks like. It's a little more visually tied into the point.
And something like an angel, I think folks have probably seen enough shows, even if they're not religious. People understand that angel doesn't necessarily mean that white, wings with a white robe on, like kind of that's like a stereotype. But it could even be something that's quite punk or cyberpunk, or that there's different interpretations of what something might look like, or how an angel might act. For example, like every one of y'all are an angel. I don't see any wings, but I see them in your spirit. Okay, I feel it. I know they're there, and I wouldn't be surprised if they just popped out visually at any time.
Well,
Okay.
even like the idea of like if it was a symbol of someone like being like giving someone their wings, I guess. So it's like, oh, now we'll give you the environment where now you can source sort of kind of a vibe to it, as opposed to, do you know what I mean? So you can like see the image and kind of infer the motto, like it works well. The motto and the mascot in this case would both infer each other, as opposed to just feeling like two separate things.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I'd be, yeah, and I wonder what the rest of the faculty would have to say about some of this identity piece, and what people would be excited about kind of calling ourselves. When I was in Peru, we were the Condors. When I was at Patriot High School, we were the Pioneers. Something that is, I think there's been a lot of controversy about something like a mascot because there has been some cultural appropriation and some things that are maybe not necessarily sensitive. So I also want to be very mindful of that this can be a controversial and touchy topic, because for something that everyone loves, man, in today's world, it's not easy. But I think it's something worth exploring. And I think with that, with our last minute or two here, is there anything else that Jedd and Tara that you may want to add that can give me or us something to think about, with establishing who we are more concretely?
I'd say the motto should be the priority, because I think that can be like the bedrock where you can get the idea of the kind of mascot or vibe going from that first. So it's a little less spitball, whatever. I think it gives you a little more, it narrows your search a little bit. If you know
Yeah.
what the motto is that you're building around, that can then be like, you can then use that to extrapolate into what kind of mascot you're after, or what type of kind of community sigil or whatever it is appropriate, because it's built around these words. So I think the motto should come before the rest of it, I think.
Okay, Tara, what are some of your final thoughts?
I agree, really.
Nice.
You have stole my point.
Cool.
But yeah, I think as we've said, everything we've said about just getting that first push, the initiative, I think as long as we can continue to demonstrate that, I think the motto might even develop organically
Yeah,
as this
yeah,
whole
that's just what I
curiosity
was
thing,
gonna
as we
say.
see what works. So I think as long as we keep demonstrating, as you said, as Sume is, it's not a authority, it's a peer, almost a model and a template and a structure that people can kind of onboard themselves onto and then apply to themselves to the point where, oh, this is how you grow.
Yeah.
I think as long as we keep demonstrating that, that's the main bedrock we need to maintain. And then once we've got that sorted, whether it's finding a motto or demonstrating the type of values that lead to that, I think they'll, as long as we're committed, organically flow from that, and then it's easier to distinguish what kind of community and vibe we're after.
Yeah, definitely. And the nice thing, and the last thing I'll say is that Sume and actually like the team, and I gave some feedback. She has a very clear vision, and this was about 6 months ago now. So it's good that we're revisiting this. She had like a week will school, what was called the 2.0, although it's really more like 4.0. This doc of a very clear vision and mission statement, and we started to map out things like the 5 pillars, what they really mean, graduation requirements, some real specifics of the Week Will School program. So we can revisit that as well, because even I think all of our thinking has naturally evolved in the last 6 months. So I really appreciate the two of your contribution to this conversation. And I think this is something that can give us some real direction, something to do as a faculty together so that we can build this, but then we can walk away with something very tangible, and very usable for our community. So
I think
thank
tying
you.
that 5 pillars into the logo as well, or the mascot, could be good as well in some way, because it's kind of like, it's there, but you do have to kind of like, oh, what were they again? Like go back and find them sort of thing. So I think keeping this in mind that like, if in doubt, consult the 5 pillars. Well, here's this sigil or mascot or anything. So it's a visual kind of, oh, right, I can go look at that if I'm struggling for anything.
Yeah.
Just kind of so there's this visual prompt almost.
I think that would be great. And if we could maybe even have like some sort of initiative where we get some students or faculty to put forth some ideas. If they're artists, we've got a bunch of artists, we've got a bunch of graphic designers. I think this could be a cool community project that I'd love to explore more. So thank you, you two. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Final push for you, Tara. I'm super excited to be celebrating with you when it's all finished and you can look back and have this huge milestone celebrated. So thank you, you two, and I'll see you next time.
See.
In bit.
Peace.